So, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for this afternoon about European tech. So, my name is Andrea Vaughan. I'm one of the co-founders of the European Champions Alliance, your hosts today with all of our esteemed partners that we want to thank very much for organizing all of this with us. So, I just wanted to make a very brief welcome from our side. We're very happy to be able to reunite this afternoon companies and people from the different ecosystems from different European countries. So I've seen Switzerland, Germany, France, the Netherlands. So this is exactly what we try to do with the European Champions Alliance, to bring together ecosystems and to have that discussions and exchange on European tech. And so I really said I would be very quick. So I will now leave the floor to Dominique, who is one of our hosts today and who has organized this for weeks. So thank you very much, Dominique, for organizing today. And I give the word to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I am Dominique Tessier. I am the one that has sent you zillions of emails. So if you want to blame someone, it's me, sorry. So no, my role is very quick because we want to go quickly into the in-depth question, but I would like to have first Femi Gerards with us on the stage. Femi is the head of Startup Village, so she's our dear host, and so thank you very much, Femi, because and after that we have some special host I will introduce. So Femi, the floor is yours.
Oh, hi everyone, my name is Femi, and I think it's the team that really did all the work, so great thanks to Daniel and Valeria first. I'm director of Startup Village, and we are based on Science Park. I can always tell hours about Startup Village, so I'll keep it short. So you're on the Science Park in Amsterdam, which is quite a special place. We really combine education, research, and entrepreneurship. So we have the NBO, the research, the science organization for the Netherlands here. We have the UvA here, and which is the big university in Amsterdam. We have the Matrix buildings, which is commercial rent in labs, but also rent. So it's a lot of technical companies there. And then we have us, and we're more on the valorization side. So we have startups, we work with companies, private and public, but we also work, of course, with all the academics. And we're trying to really, create a kind of a community where a lot of information and knowledge actually flows from one to the other. We're trying to create companies that will work with our startups, not only to have our startups thrive, but more also to have these companies gain knowledge from the startups. You're always welcome to work here, and we are also setting up an executive club. So if you're interested in that, you can always reach out to me. But for now, I really want to wish you a very nice day and welcome at Startup Village. Thank you.
So, thank you, Femi. So, as we all know, we are here in sunny Amsterdam, but we have a lot of Dutch colleagues here. But as Andrea has said, we have also other nationalities, and that's not by chance. It's because at the European Champions Alliance, we strongly believe in trying to build a federation of the different national ecosystems across Europe. And of course, doing that, we know we are not alone to do that. And it's very important for us to feel the support of the public authorities. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to welcome His Excellency François Labrune, the French ambassador, who will give us a
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear speakers, dear partners, dear participants, cher Dominique Tessier, dear Eddy Boot, dear Frits Grotenhuis, dear Femi Gerards. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today for the opening of the Deep Tech 2000 here in this science park. A park which I discovered every year. Some part I knew already, but this part I didn't know, so I'm very happy. And I would like really to extend my warmest greetings to all participants coming from different countries of Europe, and to share their expertise, their views on the future of the European technology sector and the advancements of European technological sovereignty. As ambassador of France to the Netherlands, allow me just to start by mentioning, of course, this strong relationship between our two countries, a relationship which is rooted in a long history. But today it's clear that in this relationship, in the present of this relationship, innovation and technology play a key role. And of course, many actors are contributing to this dimension, and not only governments, but small and large companies, academia, research institutions, local government initiatives. And I think it's very important to maintain and develop this synergy between all these actors, and it's clear that this event today contributes to that. I said that I was here last year. I was in Cybersecurity because of President Macron's visit to the Netherlands. And in 2 days in the Netherlands, he spent half a day, not far from here, to visit the Quantum Lab and to exchange with many actors of the sector deep tech on the issue of European technological sovereignty. And I think it was a very rich, very useful exchange. The king was also present in this exchange, and I think it was very important event. It was also accompanied by the signature on the same day of the Pact for Innovation and Sustainable Growth between our employers, and it highlighted the need for public-private collaboration in key strategic sectors. And these events, April last year, were followed by the Erasmus Descartes conference, which took place in the fall, which was organized by the scientific service of the French embassy in collaboration with the Dutch embassy in Paris. And this event, which takes place every year in France or in the Netherlands, we alternate, was devoted, as many of you know, because many of you were present, to quantum technology. And it was a very rich debate, very impressive debate. I was able to attend a large part of the discussion, and I was very impressed by the very rich and lively discussion, and it led to the adoption of a very useful roadmap for cooperation in the field of quantum technology. It was, of course, a Franco-Dutch event, but other actors were present, in particular coming from Germany, because, of course, the three countries, France, Netherlands, and Germany, in this sector are particularly advanced. In the realm of cybersecurity, the embassy organized two roundtables, one on post-quantum cryptography and second on cybersecurity in the context of large-scale sporting events using the Olympic Games as a case study. And it was once again very rich and fruitful exchange, in particular on the issue of enhancing data protection. All these events, of course, take place in a context we are all aware of the necessity to reinforce the European sovereignty in this field and the importance of the sectors we are talking about. And the recent report by Mario Draghi has, of course, underlined the importance of this objective and of this aspect of our policy. And in Europe, it's clear that France and the Netherlands, I hope so Germany, will contribute to push in that direction. I would like to, of course, mention some priorities which in particular during the roundtable to which the President and the King took part last year were underlined. The need for increased financial support, whether from public, private or joint partnerships to help startups, stronger collaboration between academia and industry, necessity to better train the next generation, and the necessity of solid world-class research infrastructure. France has made remarkable progress in areas such as quantum technology and cybersecurity, and we are committed to pursue in that direction, but we need, of course, a strong partnership with other European countries. And first of all, I think the Netherlands and Germany are key partners. So today's event reflects a collective ambition, and I would like to wish you a fruitful and successful forum, and I would like once again to thank you for having invited me. Thank you very much.
Nice is that the meeting is now totally introduced because Mr. Alabrune has already summarized the part of the talks we will talk about. So now I have nearly finished my day, nearly. I will hand the floor to the moderator of the plenary session, who's Sarah-Jane Mellor, just sitting in front of me, but now she has to come up on the stage and I will leave her invite.
Thank you very much, Dominique. And I invite the speakers for this panel to join me on stage. So, goedemiddag, bonjour, good afternoon. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to today's plenary panel discussion on a topic that is both timely and essential: how to keep successful scale-ups European as they grow. A glimpse into the future of two deep tech powerhouses in Europe, mainly France and the Netherlands. And we are incredibly fortunate to have with us a distinguished group of speakers, ecosystem and coalition builders, policymakers, investors, who bring vast experience and insight into the challenges and opportunities within the dynamic sector of quantum and cybersecurity. Our discussion today will focus on several key themes, including the identification of obstacles and positive levers that can facilitate fast, sound, and sustainable growth for scale-ups. We will also explore how the Netherlands and France create environments that are conducive to innovation through strong public-private partnerships and discuss strategies already in place. We'll address the enhancement of links between public research institutions and industry, a vital component in ensuring that technological advances translate into real-world applications. We'll also dive into what entrepreneurs can do to drive this forward and whether the consolidation of young, innovative, high-tech companies is at stake in Europe. So without no further ado, format-wise, please know that our panel will be divided into 3 rounds of questions to fully explore these complex topics. And at the end, we aim to have a 20+ minute Q&A session where we encourage you, the audience, to engage with our speakers and ask your own questions. Frits Grotenhuis, I start with you. You are the director of Topsector ICT. The Netherlands ranks 5th in the World Competitiveness Index. And just like the Amsterdam region, where we convene today, is a global frontrunner, a hotspot for innovation and ICT. And the Netherlands is actually nicknamed the digital gateway of Europe. So could you tell us about the ingredients, the key enabling technologies that underpin Topsector ICT and drive Dutch innovation and growth, and the winning formula, the triple helix cooperation, that's part of the Dutch DNA?
This one is working at least. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be part of this very relevant panel nowadays. And I would like, before I answer your questions, I would like to start with a quote. Paralysis, exit, or integration. Who of you knows who I'm quoting right now? Paralysis, exit, or integration? Well, that might be Mario Draghi, of course, from the European Commission, at least his report, and about the urgency that the call that he makes for us to set steps into further innovation and integration at the European level. Well, then first get into the Netherlands. So I think there are several kinds of perspectives on the so-called success of the Dutch digital gateway. I think our ICT infrastructure is very strong, it's very good. We have one of the highest internet speeds in globally speaking. We have a very strong connectivity in the Netherlands. So I think that is one very important element. Another one, as a Topsector ICT, we make a focus on 7 key digital technologies. So that's, of course, artificial intelligence, data, cybersecurity. That's also what my colleague Eddy will talk more about in a moment. It's about connectivity technologies, the development from 5G to 6G. It's about software computing, but also new kinds of emerging technologies such as neuromorphic computing. What we try to do as a Topsector ICT, we try to develop or support ecosystems or coalitions or public-private partnerships around these different technologies. And that really helps a lot in innovation. So an example could be the Dutch AI Coalition. And the Dutch AI Coalition is a network of over 500 stakeholders in the Netherlands working together, public-private, involving SMEs, large companies, societal organizations, governmental organizations, universities, and they all work together on AI research and innovation, but also on related topics like interoperability of data, about standardization, about ethical, legal, and social aspects in the development and the application of AI as a new technology. How does that work? So I think that this triple helix idea, together with a very solid ICT infrastructure, are key to the success for the Netherlands and the digital gateway title that you gave it. Thank you.
Thank you. Delphine, you are the co-president of the French Tech Amsterdam. Sorry. The French Tech turned 10 last year. Happy birthday. Perhaps you can tell us about the French Tech as a support platform, or better yet, as a holistic support ecosystem.
Yeah, so the French Tech indeed was 10 years last year, and it has grown in a very powerful system over the years. We have 25,000 startups in France, 1,800 in the deep tech sector, so very strong. And the ecosystem, it's a government-led initiative from the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And the idea is to support the startups, the scale-ups on the development of their activities and their growth on the international level. It's bringing together entrepreneurs, but also investors and also public institutions and tech communities. What we do is we bring people in contact, we build this network, and we share knowledge. Here in Amsterdam, we have a few of the members of the community here today. We organize a lot of events to bring these companies together, bring them in contact, also with the ecosystem in the Netherlands, tech, yeah, so this is how we are supporting the tech with this initiative. Yeah.
Thank you, Delphine. And I believe you even have programs like the French Tech 40/120 specifically for French scale-ups.
Yes, so French Tech 40, next 40 and 120 is a very strong pillar of French Tech initiative. The idea is to support scale-up with global potential to grow and give them access to visibility, funding, and help them to
bring them in contact with local organizations and interesting contacts. So here in Amsterdam, the community is welcoming a lot of this next 120 and help them develop locally.
Thank you, Delphine. Eddy Boot, you are the director of dcypher. dcypher is a collaborative platform for research and development on cybersecurity in the Netherlands, and you represent another great example of public-private partnership. Can you tell us why a collaborative environment with a combined long-term policy, technological and market perspective is mission critical to create growth hubs, but also innovation clusters in which scale-ups can thrive? I think you talk about the active cooperation chain at dcypher.
Yes, well, thank you, and I'm glad to be here with such a nice mixed audience. Yes, indeed, active collaboration chain, 3 words, and I will highlight each word because these are underlying, which I think is the success that the 2 of my predecessors over here talked also with regard to public-private collaboration. First is chain. I think the setting was explained by you, that we have a setting here where research, government, and industry works closely together. And I walked around these nice sea containers, and I think it's an inspiring environment. And I think you took the right decision to include them all, because you need them all in multidisciplinary problems like deep tech, for example, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, quantum, and so on and so on. We need all parties involved, and it's great to have them here as a geographic hub. But then the second word is collaboration. Collaboration, it sounds nice, and people like us sit a lot of our time in panels like these, and we talk about collaboration. It does not. Well, the key thing about successful collaboration is that the pull and the push effect are closely aligned. What do I mean with that? Is that if you have a brilliant idea, you develop deep tech, so you create a push effect, which is not matched with the need of eventually the market, you won't valorize. So you will have a mismatch between what you offer and what is needed. And this alignment is key. This is the rocket science, so to say, even within rocket science. Only miss it by 2 degrees and you're off. You get brilliant products that nobody wants, or answers from industry or government are unfulfilled because deep tech, which is really necessary, is not available. Then the first word, active. If you are busy aligning the push and the pull, it requires a massive effort from all the parties involved. All the parties, for example, that are living here together in this beautiful village. You can provide network events, offer some nice lunch, even with French croissants or wine, and people get to know each other. But you don't create new knowledge automatically. I think what is really necessary is that you share an ambition. That's also a cliche. Just like the words moonshots, big, hairy, audacious goals, and other equivalents or synonyms. But if you really find something that ties, that inspires all the parties involved, with all the difference in culture between industry, education, government, and research, or the difference in culture between the Netherlands, France, and Germany. I just discussed it about with Dominique during lunch. If you want to solve that, you really need an ambition that is stronger than the different individual perspectives, mandates, positions, and so on and so on. So in short, active collaboration chain. The rocket science under good working together.
Thank you, Eddy. Reinout van der Meulen, you are a partner at TIN Capital, and you invest in cybersecurity with a regional focus, namely investing for safe and resilient Europe, leading and co-leading funding rounds. Sorry, let's cover definitions. What should be, in your view, meant by European? A majority of the equity in European hands, the center of decisions in Europe, or a reduction of external dependencies?
Good question. So it's a relevant question for us as well. In cyber, there's actually 3 countries or regions that are important to us. And there's also a blacklist of a number of countries that we should discuss, but everybody knows who they are. First of all, there's Israel. It's a small country, but with a very vibrant cybersecurity startup scene, very tightly knit network of professionals, and a lot of the cybersecurity unicorns of tomorrow are born there. They're funded, and they immediately make the jump across the pond to the US. And why the US? Because the US is the biggest cybersecurity market. It's really the Champions League for ambitious founders that have a company that could be a category-defining company. So it makes a lot of sense to go there. There's a lot of venture capital. If the company is on an IPO path, it makes most sense to do that over there. And then there's Europe. And Europe has a lot of talent. There are some good or even great companies being set up here, but it does lack a unified market and also the willingness to take a risk that the US offers. In the US, as a startup, you can sell to a Fortune 500 company if you have that specific cybersecurity product that's a real pain point for a customer. They're willing to take a bet. In Europe, we just don't have that mentality, right? The bigger the company, the larger the government organization, the least likely you are to sell to them. And in cybersecurity, this is the market. 90% of the money is made with government customers and with large enterprise. So we're behind in Europe, and there are real cultural reasons why it's very, very hard as a Portuguese company to sell in Germany or a Dutch company to sell in France. It is just what it is. For the French buyer, whether that's a Dutch company trying to sell to them or a US company, it's just as far. When we invest, we do invest in Europe for a number of reasons, because we believe in the power of the European cybersecurity startups and their founders. But we also realize that they're in a challenging space. They need to work extra hard. Their execution in go-to-market and internationalization is key. That's also where we try to add value. But most of these companies will, sooner or later, become active in the US, sometimes with a subsidiary, winning customers over there, sometimes moving their headquarters, because there is a very attractive VC offer on the table from a US investor that actually in the term sheet says move to Delaware. Yeah, and that's the reality, and that's where we try to play our part. And we're not claiming to keep companies European, but we at least help delay the step, let's say, and hopefully convince them that it is possible to conquer the US market without having to be a US company.
Thank you. Excellent, Reinout. Sylvie, you are Senior Advisor at Falco Global Advisors Partners. What can investors do? When we prepared the panel, Sylvie, you laid extra emphasis on the scale-up journey and the critical need to have on board people like operating partners who truly have the experience of scaling up. Would you say in Europe it is perhaps not as easy to come by talent-wise?
So it's a great question, what investor can do. If you look at capital is commoditized, so €1 from investor 1 is literally worth €1 from investor 2. However, the advice, the relationship, the execution experience really are true differentiators. So what really matters is the combination of capital, of execution, and of relationships as well. And that's where the operating partners come into the equation. The operating partners are seasoned executives. They are former CEOs, former C-levels executives, COOs, either in corporate or in entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs. And their role is very much to pass the experience of what they have learned by doing to the startups into their scale-up journeys. So these are executives who have done international development, who have done many fundraising, who have done exits, who have been successful, and they also have failed a lot. And that's really the importance to actually prevent the pitfalls, the difficulties, and bring to the senior teams of the startups in their way to being a scale-up the sparring partner, so the ability to exchange. Now, back to your question about where does Europe sit? The role of operating partners now in Europe is still very young. In the US, operating partners were massively added into VC firms back in the 2008. It's really after the big crisis. And today, what you have is about 43,000 operating partners working for VC firms in the US. In France, it's only 1,500. So room to grow.
Thank you, Sylvie. Emmarique, you are investment manager at KPN Ventures, the venturing arm of KPN, the Netherlands' leading telecom and ICT company. What can be done to challenge in Europe the grow and go status quo? And what can European investors specifically do to retain European scale-ups and keep our ground jewels, so to speak?
Well, let's start off with everything that you said. I think will be incorporated perhaps a bit in my answer as well. But I think it makes sense because it's an ecosystem, not just an investor, it's corporate or potential clients, not just your companies, not just your tech. It should all be connected. And I think that's why it's so important to have indeed talks like this. When it comes to our venture funds, it is a VC fund, and KPN decided to have this fund to actually stay innovative on the one hand, but also because it's having super important infrastructure. As was mentioned, the fast connectivity comes from KPN, for instance. So cybersecurity, deep tech, super important for KPN. And that's why they decided to have this fund to, of course, for themselves, right? We invest, we don't acquire the companies because in the end, we believe that capital will actually help these companies because they focus on what you do. You know, you're the experts in your field. That's why you started this company. And I think that is super important to maintain. When it comes to investors, also agree with what was said before. There's a lot of investors that bring you capital, but I think especially when it comes to deep tech, cybersecurity, there's more needed than that. Because that's why in the US it's super successful, because they're super great at telling a fantastic story. And I think most of the investors sometimes don't even understand what they're investing in, but the tech looks great and the tech is going to change the whole world. So I think that is something that we as investors, so we have to know our industry. That's why it's very important to have dedicated funds like in Capital. I know Itse from Grotenhuis is here as well. Super important to have those funds because they know the industry. And they also know the ecosystem. That's what we are part of as well. We work, for instance, with all the other telcos in the world. We have lines to them. And also to other big corporates because KPN is also an MSSP. So we talk with the INGs, the Rabobanks, all the Ministry of Defense is one of the largest vendors of KPN. So it's really about connecting and being a part of a broader ecosystem than just being the investor telling you to, get your targets and we'll be there again when we need a new round of financing.
Thank you, Emmarique. Frits, Topsector ICT, as we just heard, helps give the impulse to craft the Dutch trust tech landscape with different instruments and subsidies. Topsector is keen on giving priority to strengthening connection between researchers and companies in EU programs. Where do you see more Europeanization and integration happening?
Well, I think on forehand, there's still a lot of work to do. So I'm really very much in favor, as I started already with this quote about paralysis, exit, or integration. So I think that's very important. Europeanization, difficult word though. But I think there are different approaches. So for instance, from Topsector ICT, we also try to support and stimulate bilateral innovation pacts. And for several years already, we had an innovation pact between the Netherlands and Germany. And it was recently being revised, also including and stressing more the digital technologies. And that's, of course, very important and gets even more important nowadays and tomorrow. Recently, we also have this bilateral innovation pact between France and the Netherlands. I think that's also a very important step and as a kind of framework from where we can work together. But we have to be careful that it does not remain just by paper and by words, but that we fill it in with each other. So that's also what we try to support the coming period with each other. So bilateral innovation pacts first. Secondly, we also try to stimulate Dutch organizations to participate in European large-scale knowledge and innovation programs. So think about Digital Europe, Horizon Europe. So those kinds of frameworks offer a lot of funding possibilities for universities, for private companies, but also in a European context to work together, to collaborate, to get better known to each other and to see where opportunities are. Because you have to do it together, I think. And thirdly, there are some relatively more new instruments like the European Digital Innovation Hubs, for instance. We have 6 regionally based innovation hubs in the Netherlands, and those are particularly focused on SMEs. And finally, there's also the new instrument of the European Digital Infrastructure Consortia on specific critical technologies, for instance, around large language modeling. So from the Netherlands, we also participate in the Alliance for Language Technologies. So those are different angles for Europeanization, if I say well now.
Yes,
Thank you.
perfect. Delphine, so many champions and rising star. 29, 30 French tech, French unicorns have emerged in France in the past decade. When we discuss what model do we head to, is a European unicorn model the way to go?
Yeah, I think we have even more than 30, something like 34, but the unicorn status is given to a company that has a valuation of more than 1 billion. And some of these companies went public, so they are not a unicorn anymore. And others have lower a little bit in valuation. But yeah, this goal of getting that status of unicorn is really step one. What we want to see as a European model is going beyond that and create a sustainable growth and sustainable model. What we have in Europe is a lot of diversity, right? A lot of we're very rich from this diversity. And we need to find a way to work together and unify initiative, as discussed before. There are some things going in that direction. Ursula von der Leyen announced the 28 regime, and I think it's something that is going in the right direction. But regulation has already done a great thing in Europe. I'm very active in the fintech area, and if you look at what has happened in that space, we SEPA, the single European payment area, creating SEPA payments all over Europe without barriers. The PSD2 and PSD3 regulations have created a lot of innovation in the space, and open banking and all these initiatives that we are seeing now. We even have a new scheme initiative developing in Europe called Wero to compete with Visa and MasterCard. So I believe that if we work together and if we come up with these regulations that enable the harmonization and enable us to work together in Europe, we will go very far.
Thank you, Delphine. Eddy, where do you see consolidation at the European level on cybersecurity, and what can entrepreneurs and policymakers themselves do?
Well, let me highlight the policy part, because I think my esteemed colleagues to my left are more expert on the investor side. So on the policy making side, well, let's talk about money. Draghi started with an inspirational quote, as Frits just said. At the end of his report, he asked for multiple billions of public money. And then you have a whole political discussion, of course, who's going to pay up. I have two problems I'm daily dealing with regard to public money in this innovation chain. The first being the lack of vision. I just talked about moonshots. It's unclear in Europe on a European level with regard to consolidation or working together towards creating even more unicorns. It's unclear to which direction that should go. Which man do we want to set on the moon, so to say? I think it's fair to say that we lost the battle with American big tech, as you just said, with regard to social media platforms, cloud technologies, and so on. You can still do that, but you cannot be leading anymore globally, I think. There are still a lot of possibilities, I think, within cybersecurity or artificial intelligence or other fields that we can aim at least at the moon or determine which planet we're going to. And I'm expressing this point because a lot of the subsidies that I'm working with are undirected. They are given by governmental bodies that act like Switzerland, like Swiss, stay neutral on the moon, on the content, on the goals that we want to have. I think it's time now that we lose that culture and that we together, public-private, determine in Europe how do we want to become digital autonomous with regard to the rest of the world. Which topics should we address? And that would steer a lot of also the work that you guys are doing with regard to private investments. It's again aligning of push and pull, of course. The second issue I have with public funding are the conditions. A lot of the conditions of European goals, like Horizon Europe, the defense funds, and so on. I mean, also in the Netherlands level, money is not my problem. The conditions are. A lot of entrepreneurs, startup companies come to me and say, I want to participate in subsidy calls or coalitions that we are building, public, private, but the conditions require me to put in cash money. I'd rather have it in kind or have some other exchange. And of course, there are disadvantages of doing in kind because you don't have the position with regard to intellectual property rights, of course. That's better arranged if you put it in cash. But the recent call that, for example, Frits and I put into the cybersecurity ecosystem in the Netherlands really met some disappointed results because a lot of the SMEs in the cybersecurity industry couldn't met up those conditions. I have no brilliant solutions for both moonshots and conditions, but I think that's a point that we from the public side should at least address for the coming years to be successful also on the private side of investment.
Thank you very much, Eddy. I will just jump a bit the order because I know, Emmarique, you have to leave soon, so I will ask you two questions in one. Investors are busy. So, Emmarique, on closing the gap, what other obstacles to growth do you see and what remediation strategies can be put in place?
First, yeah, so I think was briefly mentioned already a little bit. I think scaling requires you to also look outside your country's boundaries, and that's not always that easy. So I think it is super important to have alliances as well that help you move to other countries because it is not easy. It's very easy that we in Europe all speak quite well English, but our cultures are definitely different. So that is one. I think too, another thing to be able to grow and to scale, and this is sometimes feels a little bit of a vicious circle, is on the one hand, also investors ask you for product market fit. They want to know indeed if your solutions really are the thing that the market is looking for. On the other hand, we also have companies, large companies, consider KPN one as well, that are a bit risk averse and that are not always open to work with solutions that solve problems not tomorrow, because that's what they're focused on, not next week, which they're also quite focused on, but maybe in 2 years. So I think that is something for corporates to realize. What I think is very good is that we see the trend of CVC, so corporate funds, increasing, really also having more of a strategic hybrid function So not only invest to eventually acquire you, or only are financially driven, but also in between, that provide you with some extra value, but on the other hand, will also guide you through the financial deal making, just the financials of it, because you want to have a consortium of investors in the end. And I think another important thing there as well is that this network should also be broader than what you know and who you know. It should also be consisting of who your next target is. And I think it's not only about, for as a scale up, think about today, tomorrow, but who is going to be your next customer and how do you approach them? Because in the end, I don't know if there's probably a lot of cybersecurity companies. You're probably all spamming the CISO. I recommend you to not do that. Yeah, you don't want to be the sort of drug rep that's in the US context, going to the doctor and waiting outside their door, because they get a lot of inbound requests like that. So this is something that we should help you with. And also that's why approach the funds, like for instance, KPN Ventures, approach the innovation departments. They will find their way to the CISO. They will help you.
Thank you, Emmarique. I like that analogy with the doctor for pharmaceutical. Yes.
It's absolutely true. Ask any CISO and they will tell you. They probably not look at all these emails anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent analogy as well. And in the field of cybersecurity, I work a lot with CISOs, and that's a common complaint. I think as a startup, you should not address your tech as tech with regard to a potential client, but as a business case. You have a value proposition that can be of interest, maybe not for the CISO, but hopefully for the CEO or the CTO, and send your mails to them based on the business proposition that you want to add to.
Absolutely, and that is also why these are usually also, then I'm speaking for myself here, but usually we do know the company, we do know in what markets they are looking at, so we are also there to help the company see. And I think that's why the operators, for instance, same, super important.
Thank you, Emmarique. Reinout, true European champions that can compete worldwide. Tin Capital has endorsed and supported calls from the get-go, such as the European Cybersecurity Organization, EXOs, the European Commission and the European investment banks, for creating a market-orienting platform, thereby addressing urgent market needs, fragmentation and the investment bank. Yeah, Tin Capital launched in late 2023 the closing of a fifth tech fund, the European Cyber Tech Fund, with a targeted size of 100 million euros. Is it Tin Capital doing its best to accelerate the rollout of best-in-class made-in-Europe solution and applications? Yes, you can reach out to Emmarique via LinkedIn or ask me and I can give you her email.
So coming back to the question, yes, we are involved with the European Cybersecurity Organization, EXO, for 4 or 5 years now. We're actually hosting the Cyber Investor Days together with them next week, Thursday. Still a few spots left. If you want to pitch, well, no, these slots are filled, but you can come and watch. And there's a bunch of very relevant VCs in the room. We were very active in Europe. We go to all of the relevant European events. We don't really, our fund is called the European Cyber Tech Fund. Yeah. I think that's also really necessary. When we deployed from the previous fund, Dutch Security Tech Fund, we were looking at Dutch cybersecurity companies, and we did find a few real gems, but it just wasn't enough for us to deploy our fund. And we also saw a lot of great opportunities outside of the Netherlands, which we, of course, wanted to capitalize on. And as I said before, the European scene is alive. There is actually a lot happening in France, as many of you know. There is the FIC, it's the European RSA conference. It's a lot of fun to attend. There is Les Assises, is a unique business-oriented event in Monaco. So we can learn as Dutch entrepreneurs a lot from what's happening in France. The thing that the Dutch do, I think, a lot better than most French companies is because it's such a small market, the Netherlands. They're much more inclined to go abroad and sell internationally, while French companies are sometimes the king in the French-speaking world, but completely unknown outside of it, which is a real shame. The potential is obviously much bigger, and it's also the first thing that I check if I talk to a French company, if they're French or global European. Sure.
Thank you, Reinout. That's a good takeaway for French companies. Sylvie, another key takeaway from you, and which should be in your view at the forefront of everyone's mind, is addressing the value creation gap. Could you please elaborate on how to maximize value creation by European deep tech actors?
Yes, I'd like to come back to the CISO discussion with a very concrete example in the cybersecurity sector and from a VC specialized in cybersecurity, Clear Sky. If you look at the standard model, most of the time it's bi-directional. So you have the founder and you have the investor. And what Clear Sky has done is to has expanded that relationship to include the cybersecurity leaders. Clear Sky was established by 3 persons, René, who's one of our founder, and 2 former CISO. And what they've done is they leverage their experience to build a strategic partnership network of CISO. And the reason why they did that is because they didn't have that when they were CISO. So what it consists of, it's a board of advisor of Clear Sky. And they meet 2 or 4 times a year. And they really exchange their challenges, their experience. So they discuss within themselves. And what's really important is the mix of these CISO is from large companies to also high growth startups. So when you look at CISO, they want to share openly and understand between peers, also understand what are the next innovation. For the VC firm, obviously they're able to match and tailor the right discussion between the CISO and the startups. So it's even like one-to-one pharmacy and one-to-one Doctolib in a way. And I think this is super important because the founders of companies, they want to be able to speak to peers like former CISO and have that practitioner's experience also augmented with the operating partners. But what's really interesting, it goes beyond the possibility of just having capital. You have all the help with the recruiting because you understand what are the sales, the engineers, the product tech people to have, but you also have the ability to generate higher and quicker average rate of revenues in the 12 to 24 months because you know exactly how to do one-to-one introduction. And in a way, it is also what the European Champion Alliance does, is to bring all these people together with teams in order to actually get the relationship going, but also don't lose and waste time to anybody.
Thank you, Sylvie. We will now start our 3rd round of questions. Please prepare because afterwards the floor will be yours. So for the Q&A, Frits, we started with a quote. Let's conclude with a quote. Sorry. Europe does not coordinate where it matters, is among the observations in the Draghi report, released earlier this month. Europe's lack of scale in transversal technology may jeopardize its position. What can be done? I see Dominique here, and I know, do we agree it's a key issue, even if size is not everything? What can be done at national and at European level?
Yeah, very relevant discussion, and also to have in the Q&A after this panel session with each other. But let me first go back in time to 1989. So 35 years ago. Who knows Jacques Delors? Very, very well. Maybe a third, I think, of the audience. And Jacques Delors, he was one of the former presidents of the European Commission. And in 1989, he also, just like Draghi, kind of raised a red flag, or he kind of created an urgency to integrate within Europe, and then specifically towards a monetary union. 3 years later, 1992, we had the Maastricht Treaty, and 10 years later, the euro was introduced. So there's a lot of perspective, but also there are similarities. So you also need sometimes a kind of a red flag. So I'm very happy actually with the Draghi report, and also with his quote like paralysis or exit or integration. But what are the steps then towards integration? Because it's a process with each other. So I think it's very important to further invest with each other within Europe at the European level. Otherwise, you won't play a role anymore at the global scale. To further invest in our ICT infrastructure, that's very important. And there are already different pilots, different smaller projects. For example, on cloud infrastructure and services. For instance, on high-performance computing, we have Lumi in Finland. But we need larger investments to remain relevant at a global level. Secondly, I think it's important also to strive and to further stimulate public-private partnerships within Europe, because there is a lot of money indeed, but the question is how to organize that in a smart manner and bring it together at a European scale. And thirdly, and that's interesting, I think, it's about regulation. And that's kind of a balancing act, because on the one hand, we have to do with a lot of red tape, so to speak, but at the same time, you need regulation to create a level playing field in Europe, but also, again, at a global level, at a global scale. And that's very important. And we have made a good start already and from a digital perspective. Think about the Digital Market Act, the Digital Services Act, we have AI Acts, and so on and so forth. So we're already making steps, but I think we should speed up a bit with each other. So I think, to conclude again, no paralysis, no exit. We need further integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Frits. Delphine, a new initiative, Je choisis la French Tech, I choose la French Tech, was launched in 2023. Sorry. It is designed to double public procurement and purchases by large groups. Could you tell us about it, as it is particularly interesting initiative, especially when a European Buy Tech Act is on so many lips at the EU level?
Yes, Je choisis la French Tech is very interesting initiative because the idea is to provide a market to all these startup innovations and give them access to large purchase departments at corporate, whether it's on the private or the public sector. It enables contacts for these startups, but it's also beneficial, I believe, for the large corporates because it also brings them the innovation. So it's really a two-way movement. And for French tech companies that need a little bit of confidence to go beyond their border, I believe it's a very good initiative that enable them to also scale initially. The French Tech Amsterdam organized a few events already since the beginning of this initiative to organize these contacts between the corporates. And this year we have also a few on our schedule in the space environment and also on the beauty tech and in AI. So all kinds of themes in the fintech as well. So where we are helping innovators of the scale-ups to meet different corporates.
Thank you, Delphine. Eddy, one differentiating aspect you raised for the Netherlands and Europe is the human capital and talent. Could you elaborate?
Yes, I think for now in this panel we talked about money, conditions, red flags, the European Union, it all passed by, but what we are now facing is a shortage of cybersecurity or other deep tech personnel. Highly trained professionals that are really doing the innovation itself. That's a general trend worldwide, particularly hitting Europe. I think at least we should overthink three potential solutions or interventions. First, most deep tech problems are tech, but also multidisciplinarily. You need, except from the beta guys, the engineers, you need legal, you need HR, you need all kinds of psychology, sociology, and so on, in order to apply the deep tech and to valorize on it. So there's a lot of potential out there, not related to deep tech innovation, that we can use to get more workforce for deep tech innovation. Second would be that in many studies, alpha, beta, or gamma studies at universities or colleges, they are divided by their type of study. And I would plead to have an horizontal layer in all curricula, in all professionals, that includes deep tech topics like artificial intelligence or cybersecurity. So everyone has at least a feeling for that field and don't associate it with some nerdy tech domain you don't want to be in. So start early with all disciplines. And finally, it is improving and it is growing, but the number of women in deep tech is, it's fair to say, it's lower than the number of male engineers, I would say. I think there's a potential there if we can get a change of culture, that it is more open to to other genders. I think there's a potential there as well. So these are really free practical solutions. I mean, there's a lot of policy on this, which is really fake and full of good intentions, but at least that's the free things I would love to put in place on a European scale.
Thank you, Eddy. Remember, we have 2 extra questions and then the floor is yours. So do prepare your questions. Reinout, the cybersecurity market is predicted to hit 362 billion euros by 2028, according to the EEB. What model should we head towards in Europe? Should it be the same as the US? Is it a European tech unicorn model or something slightly different that we need for Europe?
I've thought about this question a little bit. So one of the things that we of course do if we prepare to make investments, we try to think of scenarios how to sell the company after 5 years, whatever. And then you're looking at strategic buyers and you're kind of making a list, and then it's always funny to see how many European buyers are there. Not many. There's a handful, really, and that's about it. And in the US, there's sometimes 50. And this is something that doesn't change overnight. The reason why they are in the US is, as I said, in cybersecurity, the biggest market is there. The stock market and IPOs over there are much more attractive than European stock markets. So unless you find a way to raise unicorns, whatever, have IPOs here, keep those companies here, have them start, having M&A budgets, buying other companies. It's a cycle that you need to get started before you can reasonably expect things to change. So there's quite a few factors involved that is not really just about cybersecurity or tech or talent or any of that. So I'm normally a very positive person, but on this topic, I'm just realistic. Whenever we get inbound offers for our portfolio companies, they're pretty much always from the US. Yeah, I mean, that is what it is. And there are a few things in Europe that we're good at. We're good at regulations.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a joke, but it's also not a joke because regulations, they're not for fun. They have a goal, and things like GDPR. Yeah, it did set the gold standard worldwide. It has been copied in other jurisdictions. The same is going to happen with the Cyber Resilience Act and other relevant DORA and NIS2 and whatever. They really have a function, these regulations, and I'm sure we'll see those pop up in other geographies as well. So this is actually an area where European companies, startups have the upper hand, or they have the edge. They can start in Europe, and actually that's a great place to be in Europe for GRC, compliance, governance, etc. So there are a few kind of things to be positive about, but in general, the situation is very US oriented. I mean, the same for Israel. Everybody who is in Israel, once they've started to fund the company and they got their first pre-seed investment, the first thing they do is move to the US.
Yes, thank you, Reinout. Sylvie, any thoughts of us for striking the right balance and the recommended model for Europe?
Well, I think we need to address the scale-up financing gap. The data are just overwhelming. Companies grow, their investment and their financing needs will grow as well. And if you look at, you compare the US with the Europe, you have 7 times more bigger VC funds in the US than in Europe. Bigger fund being over 600 million. And company backed by VC in the US receive 5 times more money than the European ones. And when you look at scale-ups financing, it's all in the European Investment Fund report if you want to read more. But what's interesting is the scale-up investment in the US is about 2/3 of financing, and in Europe is less than half. So what you really need is to address that gap. I mean, this is why we're addressing with our fundraising a 1.2 billion cybersecurity and other safety technology focused fund, because this is what is needed. Because as the company grows, and we have great ideas that came, into super business model and great companies like, Wise, WeTransfer, and so on. But those companies along the way, as you say, Reinout, they will want to actually go to the US for the biggest. So for me, the biggest priority is to address this scale-up financing gap, get more bigger VC funds in Europe.
Thank you, Sylvie. And now, as mentioned, the floor is yours. So we will have a mic circulate. Are there questions? Oh, I see already one question. Fabien, and maybe you can introduce yourself when asking the question.
Hope it works. Hi, Andreas Weilbrot from Enclave. We're a German cybersecurity startup. To the latter 2 questions, you said so nicely we need to address the scale-up fund, and there was a whole day on addressing the topic in Germany a week ago, trying to copy a little bit of what France did decades ago. So Germany is slowly awakening again. Besides addressing it, what would be the single or the 2 most relevant things that you believe that we would need to change in continental Europe to be able to change that? Because we're all aware numbers too small, we don't have that money. But on the other hand, we see that our family offices, so the rich families of Europe, put their money in US funds. Why don't they put it in European funds? There must be a reason beside that the ecosystem is nice and they all like to travel to California twice. So what would be your suggestion that from a change perspective?
So there is one thing that I'm always kind of wondering about, is that the single most important thing for a startup, I don't think, is funding. There is plenty of money in the world. The thing is, investors will very, very closely look at your performance and potential before they make a decision to actually invest in you, instead of the thousands of other opportunities that they see, right? So the real challenge of a startup is not to raise money, is to make sure that they build a business that customers really value, that customers drag the product from your hands. And how can European governments help with that? Well, in cybersecurity is different than in most industries, in the sense that government is a big spender. If you hire talent that has a government background in cybersecurity, it's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. So the role of government, European governments, as customers for European companies should really be stimulated. There should be much more focus to buy European, and not French government buying from French startups, which they already do, which is good, right? But if you have a German startup that actually offers a slightly better product, buy the German product, right? I think European. So that's definitely something that I would like to see changed. There's a lot of politics involved, so it may never happen. But this is definitely something that I think is important, because as a European startup, we've invested in a company called iSecurity. They're headquartered in The Hague, offices now in Belgium and in Germany, and they did attract large US VCs, Bessemer venture partners in the Series A, They attracted JP Morgan Growth in their Series B. Their access to capital was great. Actually, I get calls every single day by VCs. Hey, can you introduce us to this company? They're doing great. So the capital piece is sometimes used, to be honest, by founders that are struggling to fundraise, but it's not a real issue. There is money. If your business is doing great, you will get inbound interest of people that want to get in your cap table. And I'm the same. There are a few gems out there. I want to be on the cap table. I'm struggling to get on the cap table because they get money for everybody, right? The funding and the funding gap has been discussed all the time, and it's true. If you look at the numbers, the US VCs have larger funds. It's true, but that doesn't mean that it's more difficult for a good company, wherever it's located, to receive funding. It's simply not true. It's my opinion.
If I can add to that, the 2 points that you're making. First, with respect to government procurement of deep tech in general, or cybersecurity in specific, which I have experience with. The problem is that procurement should be neutral and open and fair and so on and so on. All that kind of rubbish, which is true and justifiable, but it hampers or at least limits the possibility that they buy innovative cybersecurity products. In the Netherlands, we are starting a number of programs, the Small and Medium Business Enterprise Innovation Research Fund, governmental name, sorry, in which you just get money as a startup to build a nice semi-ready product, somewhere between a demo and a real application, show to the government, and then you get to phase 2, 3, and so on, and then they can procure it in the end. So these are really the way to go, I think, and I would encourage that on a more massive scale as well. But procurement and the government will always be, even apart from national security points of view, it will always be difficult. The second point that you're making with regard to, for example, even the Dutch company that you gave us an example, is that a lot of cybersecurity companies, at least in the Netherlands, are service-oriented. They produce a cybersecurity service, for example, pen testing or implementing an American-built or Israeli-built piece of software or a SOC or something. And services, as you know better than I do, are hard to scale. I will always encourage startups that come with me with, which I always call a box, a piece of hardware tech. That's easier to scale up and easier to get bridge the gap with respect to later phases of scaling up than services. But my problem is that most of the 150, about that number, cybersecurity SMEs in the Netherlands mostly do in services with American or Israeli software. So I would encourage to focus also more on the product side.
I just want to add one point. Again, data speaks for themselves. If you look from the CISO perspective, the end user, again in cybersecurity, 55% of the CISO have more than 70 vendors. So I think it is time to integrate rather than just being niche players in each of the markets and the sub-markets.
Thank you. I think we had another question at the end.
Hi, I'm Fabien. I'm a GP in a healthcare fund, but I would speak as an entrepreneur. I think the deep tech companies, most of the problems is that they go for fundraise, because it's hard for them to find actual clients, right? So how do you actually change that mindset to incentivize companies to take deeper risk to try to work with deep tech startups?
It's very silent. So I'm not a deep tech expert. I'm really cybersecurity expert, not even that. But I think this is the nature of deep tech investment. Deep tech is essentially that. There is a very long phase where you're building technology that's not an incremental change on what's available today, but it's really a step change. But it's going to take a long while before the product is ready for customers to buy and use. Right? So this is an especially difficult place to be as an entrepreneur, because you have to convince deep tech funds. You're not going to find any. I mean, we don't invest in deep tech positions. If there's no customers, we're not investing, period. So you're going to have to go to specialized VCs, deep tech VCs that understand this and that have patient money, that have longer fund horizons, that are willing to go on that journey with you, right? And that have the technical skill and capability in-house to assess whether the technology that you're working on will become the next thing that all the customers will want to buy. That's all that I can give you right now.
I'm just curious, and I'm really curious about your opinion. Is cybersecurity a deep tech or not? Because there are many different perspectives on cybersecurity. Some say it's just an economic problem. Some say it's a data science problem. As I said, many of the SMEs in the cybersecurity industry in the Netherlands are directed towards providing cybersecurity services, like surrounding a small part of deep tech. It's cybersecurity a deep tech proposition, you would say, also for the both of you as investors, or is it just a multidisciplinary problem that some companies have partial solutions for, which is the reason why the CISOs have 70 vendors in their portfolio, which makes this discussion also a little bit different with regard to typical deep tech solutions. I'm just curious.
I'm a big believer of specialized VC funds. And I will actually look at cybersecurity as one vertical. Maybe, of course, you can have, at the beginning of the stream, some of the deep tech solutions, but from an investor standpoint, it's really important to understand from the beginning to up to the end user needs, what is at stake and how companies can go from one stage to the others. So I prefer investing in what we understand. And again, one of our founder has been investing in cybersecurity with Clear Sky from seven years, and is still discovering every single day when we meet with companies or when we talk with CISO of their unmet needs. So for me, I'm pretty focused. I prefer.
Any other questions? I think I saw some hands raised earlier in here. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Octavia de Weert. We're running a not-for-profit DDoS mitigation center, which is obviously very curious for most of the people in the room. But one of the questions is another take of why US and, of course, Israel is heavily investing in cybersecurity and Europe not. Would you think that would be also maybe because they have a more warfare approach to cybersecurity than we do in Europe?
Yeah, for sure. So if you look at the US defense spending, it's about 5% of gross domestic product. And here we're happy to get 2, right? The mindset is completely different. I'm actually from Belgium. I moved to the Netherlands when I was 18 to study here. And I stuck around because I really like the open and trusting society that the Netherlands still is. So that's in an Anglo-Saxon world is very, very different. Yeah, so it's a cultural thing.
A very joyous note, but do you think it would be time that we as Europe would take that approach a little bit more firm?
I think, speaking from the Netherlands perspective, I see that the public policies are moving towards more threat-based policy making. I think it is starting step for step, not as fast as I would have liked, just I think like you, but particularly with the war in Ukraine starting, I think there's a change on perspectives on that. Yes.
Also to add on that, so like cybersecurity is already, there I go again with my numbers. 1973 we had the first cyber research and innovation already with Bob Thomas. So it's like 50 years ago, but it takes a lot of time, of course, to develop research innovation in this area, and it's a matter of urgency and a sense of urgency. And indeed, as also Eddy stresses, since Ukraine, Russia war, that was also kind of a wake-up call, I think, for Europe and also for the Netherlands. But it really takes time, and also in my perspective, I would also love to have it a little bit faster, that we take up on that on this very important topic, indeed.
I completely agree with you. The problem with cybersecurity, though, is that for the general public, it's fairly invisible, right? There are things happening every second that if it was publicly known, people would be much more into this is a lot worse than we think mindset, right? And then the willingness to spend more on cybersecurity, on defense, etc., would be a lot higher, I think, in the general public. But I think it's a tightrope for politicians and government to, on the one hand, keep that away from people so everybody can lead a normal life, and at the same time making sure that the economy and that the country is in a state where it can actually defend itself. Where, to be honest, we have dropped the ball a little bit since the fall of the Berlin Wall, for sure.
Other questions? I've seen a hand raised earlier. Yes.
I would have one. So Andrea, founder of the ECA. I would have maybe, because we have a couple of minutes left, just a question for you, because we talk a lot about we need to learn how to work together in Europe. We have to get closer. We have to build ecosystems. So from your perspective, because there's so many things going on in Europe, but still we have the impression that there's not enough happening in Europe and that we're not working closely enough and that people do not know each other enough and, all of this. So maybe from your perspective also, if I may take it as a small questionnaire for the ECA, what do you think is still missing in Europe? What would you dream about that we have in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years as a, I don't know, might it be organization or the way we work together or the way we collaborate? What would be like your, if you had a magic wand and you could change something? I would be more on the private, but also on the public side. What would you really like to see happening in Europe so that we get this shit together?
And what I would love to see is real case study of European success. Because we look at, some of our frame of references are in the US or Israel. But the European ones, where is the Airbus of cybersecurity? How do you get there? That's really what I want to have, a few, in my mind, examples of how it works.
Or maybe just to think of different ways. How would you describe success except for financial success in this matter?
I wasn't looking at financial success. I was looking as really, standard companies. So the great ideas like Skype staying in Europe. For me, European is the number of employees you have. Your decision making is being in Europe. How you're financing is not always how I define actually European.
But isn't one of the problems, taking your metaphor, that the average Dutch or European company that is successful is already sold when it's still in state of Wilbur and Orville Wright instead of going to Airbus?
That's exactly, we were asked to be dreaming. That's my dream. Okay. That was the question.
I see there's one. Oh, was a question.
The answer from all of you, even though it's...
My name is Panja. I'm the CTO of the Mellor cybersecurity company from Eindhoven. We actually do a product. We don't do serve. Yeah. So
I know it too. It's good.
Right. And as a startup scale up, we take all the risk to do the product, right? And to me, I've been working on this for 5 years. We are pretty lonely in this area. We will deep tech and build product. The thing is, we have the product that's ready for the market, and you're right, Eddy. The biggest customer in our area is happen to be government. As one of our customers is Commander Idol. And the thing is, to get them buy our product, we have to be participating in a tender, which is quite a lengthy process, right? CISO, we met the doctor. CISO interested in our product, but then procurement takes a long time and lengthy process, and we have to battle with a big company like big name like American solution or service company. And with procurement, most of the time, you know the term, right? Nobody gets fired by buying IBM. So that is also happened in this area too. So how do you see what could be a good change in this area? Who could have done it differently to improve kind of the survival rate.
So wrapping up, and then a point for Andrea's dreamy question. Sky is the limit.
I will help you. I will answer with my dream. So you have two. IBM survived because there was an enormous market and competitors also thrived. And my dream would be that the Airbuses of Europe and the big public organizations in Europe define their needs for cybersecurity more precise, more strictly, because that creates a market. So if you have a market, bigger companies can provide integrated services. Those integrators need SMEs. Those SMEs need startups. And then you've got a whole chain working together. But it starts with the needs and the requirements of the end users, particularly the big end users that have a lot of money, the BMWs, the Airbuses, and so on. So these are the start of the whole chain. And that's what helps the competitors of IBM as well, even the small ones. That would be my dream in 5 to 10 years.
Maybe to end, my dream would be that the Draghi report will be fully carried out. But that's over 100 suggestions, ladies and gentlemen. So what is more or less realistic? How to prioritize with each other? I only raised the question. I'm not going to answer that part. But when will I be happy or satisfied in the coming years? When Europe is not only a regulatory power, but also regains footage on the global tech race. So that's, I think, very important. But it is a process, and we have to take different steps and to prioritize and find each other at the European level again.
Maybe to add one more, Erasmus program was a big success on the education side. And I think the cooperation between the education system and the business system is one of the ways to develop cooperation. So a European collaboration with education, private, public, help on that scale as well.
My dream? Well, I also alluded to it before, but it would be lovely to see a category defining company like a Wiz, for instance, in cloud security posture management, to have 1 or 2 European examples of those, because that shows that it can be done, right? A Wiz declining a $32 billion acquisition offer from Google, that's kind of what you want to see. The confidence that we're bigger than that, and because that's going to drive a whole cycle of reinvestment.
Sylvie, you had a note. So I see a lot of other hands, but I think we are done because we have the coffee. Unless we want, no, Andrea. I think yes. Okay, yes. Because
Sorry.
there were 2 other.
Thank you. I don't want to hold you from the coffee, but I just have a question. So Penja made a very interesting point, right? So how do we make sure that it stays in the Netherlands and don't exit in the US? Because if we cannot find clients here, it's going to look outside, and it's going to be harder in France and even harder in Germany if it's not locally located. So how do we keep the talent here? Otherwise, it's the European deep tech, right? Otherwise, it's going to go somewhere else. How do we solve that problem?
Yeah.
A bit of a curveball, but sorry.
Yes, and I think we can also answer some of the questions during the coffee breaks, so we get a bit more of brain power with the coffee and the tea. I see, Christophe, you had a question? No? Oh, okay.
I wonder why we're always going to trying to get contract from any government, any local government. We should stop. In the US, I have not seen any startup trying to get a contract for any federal or any governmental entity. It's all private. And I think that's why they're winning. Their cash machine starts day one. And I think we should stop trying to have all our startups trying to convince any of our government that the product is the best. And those companies should try to get public as soon as possible and get available as soon as possible. Cybersecurity is a digital product. Digital is easy, flexible, scalable, available everywhere at any time from any given point. So that's my affirmation here.
Thank you, Christophe. And as I said, this is an ongoing conversation. That's why we left the question marks. And as Reinout mentioned earlier, we have the FIG in 2025. I think you said the French RSA or the European RSA. But we have also the One Conference next week. We mentioned, Reinout said there's also this EXO Investor Day. So we have a lot of other meetings points, and of course watch the space of the European Champions Alliance, because we will be, continuing this, and this is forward looking and also scenario forward. I will pass back the floor to Dominique, but before that, a warm round of applause for our speakers. Thank you very much.